technology that involves, which is why we have got ourselves a panel presented by Wacom and also by Clip Studio Art. We are going to be having two great creators using some incredible technology, and we're going to be showcasing what they can do with that up on the stage. Now, I understand we have a little bit of a script here, but I understand that script is being thrown out? Is that the, yeah, that's fine. But I think we'll certainly talk about the artists that we've got on stage. My name's Leonard, by the way. I'm going to be kind of guiding the session, but it's definitely about these two. We're going to let them talk about what they do and how they do it. If you do have any questions, please do put your hand in the air. And I know it's going to be a little bit like school and everything, but do let us know and we'll try and answer any questions that you may have, certainly about the process that they are using up on stage. So first things first, we do have a couple of mics, and we do want to kind of introduce you to these people. I think it's okay. I think they'll control it from they control it from the desk. We're all good. First and foremost, I think we'll introduce from left to right. Ladies first. Can you please make some noise? Welcome to the stage, Mikiko, everybody.
Woo!
Thank you very much for joining us. We'll just take a couple of minutes out to kind of introduce you to anybody who may not be familiar with you or your work. I like to do it this way. If you are introducing yourself to someone at a dinner party, give us that kind of quick introduction where you're selling yourself. Tell us who you are and a brief introduction into what you do.
Hello, yeah, my name is Mikiko, and I'm a half Japanese, half German manga artist. I mainly do a lot of work online, so some of you might have seen my Mickey's mini comics. They're a slice of life webcomic that you can read about my life and my cat and drawing and all the issues you encounter as you're drawing. I've also been published for about 10 years in Germany and only recently moved to London about 2 years ago. I generally do game cover art, for example, as well, illustration, comics and manga, but my favourite is always manga. Excellent
stuff. I'm guessing the art bug from a very early age, was it a fine art introduction into what you do?
It was kind of mixed, so because I am half Japanese, I've always been exposed to manga and anime, and it was kind of like a connection to back home because I didn't grow up in Japan. I was born there, but I didn't grow up there. So whenever I was travelling around the world, the manga and anime were kind of a feeling of home for me, and my mother would always show us like these children's shows and everything was manga. But my mother herself, she did watercolour, and so I learned some traditional watercolour and portrait drawings and pencil drawings before I actually decided. When I was around 12, I just read a Shonen Jump comic, so it was action adventure for boys, and I just decided, well, somebody's got to draw this as a job. Well, I guess I'll just be that when I grow up, and then my dad wasn't very happy because...
Being a comic artist, have you grown up yet?
Well, I think you never really grow up. It's living the dream and being able to do whatever you want, really, in art, so yes. But my dad was working for a bank, so he didn't think that was very great in the beginning. But he's very supportive now, so yes.
And in terms of transitioning from traditional to digital work, how long have you been using digital media?
So at some point, my dad decided that, well, I guess she's serious at 12. And then when I was 15, he got me my first Wacom tablet. And I slowly but surely made a transition around that time. It was very difficult in the beginning. A lot of people have issues. But I feel like I was quite happy with, having enough time at 15 to practice as much as possible and do all the mistakes, make all the mistakes and grow a bit from it. So yeah.
Stuff. Now, Mikiko's work and the tablet is attached obviously to the left-hand side, the left-hand screen. We are going to have a bit of a warm-up drawing. Now we did, like I say, have a couple of ideas, but I think we'll leave it free form. We'll leave it to your own choice. So we'll let Mikiko dive in and go to her warm-up drawing as we speak. Teague, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause please. Especially a round of applause if you've read 2000 AD. If you have, you know this man's work. The guy is certainly a mainstay of British comics, and it's a pleasure to have you here. If you would like to introduce yourself in terms of your background and also what you're up to, what you've done.
Hi, my name's Dylan. I'm from Cardiff in Wales. I've been working professionally in illustration for about 20 years now. Most of that has been for, like you said, 2000 AD, but I've done a little bit for Marvel and DC, and at the moment I'm working on a European comic.
That's a real pocket, kind of, considering the stuff that you've done, that's a real pocket intro of what you've gotten into. I mean, what is the characters that you've done for 2000 AD, the ones that people may recognise?
Yeah, I've worked on Judge Dredd, Road Trooper, Strontium Dog, all the main characters. All the big boys.
Excellent stuff. And obviously, I mean, I think it's also something that can be said about 2000 AD, because it is a weekly comic, and that is a kind of process that eats artists, it eats it's a creators, it just goes through content like nobody's business. Working digitally, that is a big key then, because you're having to get stuff done and get it ready for print ASAP. I'm guessing then digital it's almost essential to what you do as a 2000 AD artist.
Well, yeah, most of the work I do for them now is just computer colouring, because I'm quite slow at actually drawing, but colouring I'm quite quick at, so I've been concentrating on that, and obviously that has to be digital.
Fair enough. And I'll switch the question slightly to the one that I asked Mikiko, because you have been using Wacom when we were talking just before we came on stage, from the very beginning, from the early items. So tell us about your history with the Wacom technology.
Well, I started off with a pen partner years ago, which is like an A6, tiny little tablet, and I moved on to the Intuos, and then a Cintiq 21, and now I'm on a mobile studio as well.
I'm guessing that early technology, while it was very formative in that digital era of creating comics digitally, it very temperamental. When do you feel that it's really kind of evolved to something that can be used professionally? When did you feel it's actually, you know that something's going to happen when you use the tool?
I've got to say with Wacom, right from the start, it was really good equipped. You know, it was good enough for professional work. And the only difference really with the Cintiq is that I could never draw on the tablets, but with the Cintiq I can draw as well as colour, because of I could never get over the disconnect you had with the tablet of drawing down there while the image came up on the screen. But the actual pressure sensitivity has always been brilliant from Wacom.
Excellent stuff. If you want to do a warm-up sketch, if you want to dive into that's going to be on the screen on the right and the centre up there. It's creating a new project, a new canvas. And yes, I think we'll move over to Mikiko, and we'll look at this wonderful little sketch that you've done. You've done it in black and white there, and I can see that we've got a couple. What layers are you using at the moment? Is it
just one layer?
Just the one layer?
Yes.
Okay, and just the one pen size? How is it to kind of move through the pens?
Yes, well, for quick sketching I just use whatever hard brush I can get and then just sketch on one layer. I generally don't switch around, I don't do many complicated things. I tend to, instead of erasing things, I just hit X, which switches foreground, background colour, and just paint over black, white. And then eventually I'll move on to, I just realised I've drawn it upside down somehow. Why is that? Okay, well, later on then
It's the right way round on the screen, that's
yes. I'm not sure why the preview is upside down. Anyways, later on I will change the opacity of this sketch layer and then start drawing cleanly on top on an ink layer, and then one more layer for colours where I tend to merge everything, which is something a lot of people are very afraid of. So I just block out some colours and then later on just edit them, add things on top, and when I like it, just merge, and then make a new layer, draw on top. When I like it, just merge it again.
Is that your main workflow generally for the pieces that you do?
It really depends. So
Yeah.
I really like experimenting a lot because I find that that's the only way you really learn and you don't end up stagnating in terms of style and art. So I try to challenge myself. So if I see somebody do a different method, I will try it a little bit. Unless it gets too frustrating, eventually I might just, go back to my usual habits. But it's important to try. For this one, this is kind of like the classic manga-looking, very simplified drawing with very strong contrasts and very simple colouring. So I do have some more digital paintings that I use a completely different approach there, but I find that might be a bit too long to fit into this panel. So
Yeah, it's a case of what we can kind of do in the time we've got. But I do want to definitely get into the workflow, like you say, that's how you've done for this piece. In terms of layering and in terms of blocking out colour, how do you approach that with the Wacom? What's your process in that regard?
yes, well, I also have a Cintiq at home, so it's a larger one, 27-inch, and it's a bit too big for me because it's quite heavy, so moving it around can be quite challenging. And I also find, similarly to Dylan, sorry, that drawing directly on the screen is really, really crucial to get work done quickly. And I've noticed that I don't have any bad digital art days anymore because of this, because if the tablet's separate, you do need to sort of find the right position to have the correct line correspond to how you're drawing and how you're feeling. So yeah, it's quite large, so I'm used to having a huge screen in front of me, but I find this format is just right. Anything smaller would be a bit difficult. Yeah.
Dylan, you're really kind of going straight into very strong lines there with your piece here. Is that something that is your usual style, or do you kind of block out quite loose with your lines to start with, or are you going straight to it on this one?
No, this will be the sort of loose layer.
Oh, this is your loose layer. Whoa. Okay, fair enough. I'm noticing there you're also.
If you like, there's like.
Yeah, sure. And I noticed you're also going almost traditional in terms of your the sketchwork. You're going to a pencil line.
Yeah, that's what I really like about Clip Studio is it's actually just this one brush that was made by Ray Friend, and that just almost feels like a real pencil. So.
When it comes to the kind of finding of brushes, because I follow a number of digital artists, and there does seem to be this little collective, this bunch of people that are sharing brushes.
Yeah.
And everyone's. Do you find that you use freeform brushes, or do you use the ones that are built into the Wacom, into the Clip Studio?
I do. I bought all of Ray Frendon's brushes, which are really good, and another person called Paolo Limoncelli. But I also make my own brushes. Because I've made like a big
splatter brush. Whoa, okay.
Stuff like that. And yeah, just once you get to know the brush engine, it's quite easy. And if you do buy other people's brushes, it's worth going through the settings and altering things yourself and just trying to work out how the engine works so that then you can create your own brushes.
Okay. Right, so I know that the way we were going to go is via kind of like a little warm-up sketch and then kind of dive into something a little bit more involved. But I think we're going straight with the piece that we're going straight to the piece that is on screen. So when it comes to the pieces that you do, Mikiko, how long does it take you to put a? Because you say that you are drawing on a daily basis, you're posting on a daily basis. How long does it take you to do one of your pieces for the for your own site?
Yeah, so it depends on which style in the end. Like this one is very easy. I can do that in maybe 2 hours or something if I'm taking my time. I often post work in progress just because people really enjoy seeing how something comes to life, and the steps are interesting for people who are learning as well. So I often don't post daily like new things, completely finished things daily, but sketches and studies. So as I said, this one's really easy, but when I go into digital painting, it can take quite a while. I've taken 2 weeks to finish a huge group, a shot of like my D&D group, for example. That took quite a while. But yeah, so it really depends.
It's those D&Ders, they're very specific, you can't upset them.
D&D is just great, everybody should play it.
Well, that's definitely a trick. So where are we in your piece at the moment? Because you've obviously, that initial sketch has been taken down in opacity, and you're now over the top of that. Let me just come around so I can have a look at the
Yes,
layers.
this is the ink layer.
Okay.
So that's the sketch underneath, and then I'm cleaning it up and just picking the correct lines to trace over. And then afterwards, I actually have to pay attention to the lines closing correctly, even though there is a tool to close gaps when you colour. I do try to be as clean as possible in this stage so that colouring is very quick. So I tend to find that colouring is the slowest step for me, because of all of the steps, colour is the one I struggle most with. And so, like building up towards starting with colours, I try to make everything as easy as possible, and yeah, in the hopes to not mess up then later.
Are there any tips and tools that Clip Studio provide in that regard? I mean, you talked about kind of like auto completing there.
Yeah, so that's the next step, but there is definitely a one part that's quite nice, which is the stabilization. So it actually smooths out how your lines look. I don't think you can really see it, but you can feel it when you draw it. So with that turned off, drawing curves is usually a little bit difficult. I'm just really trained, so mine was looking fine, but a lot of people have issues drawing very straight, long lines, and for that, stabilizing the lines is incredibly helpful. So it just smooths it out naturally, so that you don't have to Control Z 20 times, you just do it once and then it's nice. So that's one of my favourite parts, and you can set it to how strong you like it as well.
How long did it take you to find those settings? So like for weight, for the pencil, and like you say, for all these separate elements, I mean, how long did it take you to?
I think for Clip Studio, it was actually one of the selling points for me, because everybody in the manga community would talk about it. It's like, oh my god, it has a stabilizer in it, you should totally try it. So that was the first thing I heard when I heard Clip Studio, was you got a stabilizer. And then everything else was just discovering it over time. I found YouTube videos that showed what sort of perspective tools you can use and things like that, and anything you struggle with, suddenly there's like this magical thing you can use. I have to admit, I'm still quite new to this, so I don't know all the tricks, so I'll try my best, but I'm pretty sure some people in the audience know better than me. So.
Well, that's going to be the question I'm going to ask Dylan as I go across. I'll leave you to do some bits and pieces on yours. Dylan, like I say, we're talking about the way that you learn and how you develop with Clip Studio and with the technology. Is there a strong online community so that you can draw, a resource that you can go to kind of get tips, get ideas, get sort of things that just point you in the right direction, or is it kind of learning on your own, really?
Nowadays, it's brilliant on YouTube. If you just search for Clip Studio or Manga Studio, you'll find hundreds of tutorials and walkthroughs and things. But I've been using it since Manga Studio 4, so I know my way around it quite well now. But
I am liking that you've put yourself a background in there already, which gives it that texture pretty much out of the box.
Well, I've got a lot of textures saved on file, and I'd used one on this warm-up drawing before, so I just copied that and put it into here.
Excellent stuff. When would you start looking at going into your colouring phase? Because Mikiko's saying that well, she's not saying that she's putting it off as much as possible, but certainly it's something that she kind of sees barreling down the pipe. Whereabouts are you closer to?
I tend to bounce around with my method. Like I'll get this to a certain level, and if I'm starting to get frustrated with the drawing, maybe I'll jump in and do a bit of colouring, and that'll help the way the drawing goes.
Yeah, shape it where you're going from there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up. I do want to make it about you guys. If there's any questions that you want to put, especially if you are getting interested in creating on a digital level, and also if you are an artist yourself, if there's any questions you want to ask about technique. Does anybody have any questions for either of these two? Do you want to put your hand in the air? Don't be shy. Well, we've got a couple here. We'll start. He beat you to it, only by seconds, but he did beat you to it. Hello there, sir. What I'd like you to do, give us your name, nice and close to the mic, and give us your question as well.
Hello, my name's Don, and the question is, how often do you sketch non-digitally and then go into digitally every day? Do you practice every day, or do you have off days, and how do you beat that sort of thing?
I still like to sketch traditionally a lot. I keep a sketchbook, and I go life drawing once a week. So I like to doodle or sketch most days, basically. And sometimes you can, if you do something you're quite happy with in your sketchbook, you can scan it into the computer and take it on further.
That was going to be another question as well, because I've seen a number of people that they start with their blue lines, as it were, on a sketchbook, and then scanning that in to Clip Studio. Is that something that you've answered that? That's what you.
Oh, yeah. I still do my smallest thumbnails for comic pages. I still tend to do them in a sketchbook, and there's hardly anything there. It's just more than anything, it's about the composition of the panels. But I still like to scan those in and use them as a starting point for my comic strip stuff.
I also like the fact that you say that you still go to live drawing.
Yeah.
We had John Romita earlier, John Romita Jr. Sorry, and the whole panel, Amanda Connor, every week they just do for form and for figure work. I think that was interesting stuff. Right, so your name, your question, nice and close to away you go.
Hi, I'm Imperial. My question is about vector versus raster. I can't quite see from here if you're using raster primarily or vector for your line work, or do you find you use the vector tools a lot, or just in general?
I never use the vector tools. I always just keep the raster layers. So.
It's exactly the same for me.
Excellent stuff. So Dylan, you're getting into some very rough shading into your colours there. You're keeping it very, very loose. Mikiko, what you like? Because I've seen some people very, very detailed in terms of their blocking and their getting their colour palettes in place. We're seeing here with Dylan, he's very much a case of very loose and very across the board. Yourself, are you very tight to your lines? Where do you go?
In this case, yes, because